Okay, guys, let's descend into the labyrinth of Hawara. Let's go.
Today, we are really getting into something extraordinary, an architectural mystery so vast, so complex, that the historian Herodotus claimed it made the Great Pyramids look, well, almost simple by comparison.
We're talking about the labyrinth of Hawara. This incredible, potentially multi-level complex built near the pyramid of Pharaoh Amenemhat III, out in the Fayum region of Egypt.
And this isn't just straightforward history, is it? It's this fascinating mix of solid archaeological fact and some really out there hypotheses.
Absolutely, it sits right at that crossroads. So for you listening, our mission today is to unpack this amazing stack of sources. We'll start with these almost unbelievable eyewitness accounts from classical writers like Herodotus.
Okay.
Then we grapple with the much more fragmented reality that archaeologists like Petrie found on the ground.
Right, the ruins.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And finally, we'll explore the cutting-edge stuff, geophysical data, satellite imagery, and the really speculative theories that suggest this wasn't just a temple or a tomb.
But potentially?
Yeah, potentially a kind of ancient supercomputer, an analog one, built on a continental scale.
Wow, okay, that's a massive jump from, a high priest guiding Herodotus through spooky whispering corridors, all the way to architectural logic gates. How do we even bridge that?
That's the challenge, isn't it? The sources we have, they almost force us to consider it as both. It's a sacred site, deeply ritualistic, but also potentially a machine.
A machine built from stone and ritual.
Precisely. The labyrinth of Hawara might make us rethink what high technology even meant in the ancient world. So we'll look at the classical descriptions, the hard facts on the ground, the geophysics,
Okay, let's unpack this then. We're going from Herodotus's secret tour
to the stark reality of Petrie's dig.
and landing on this idea of a colossal information processor. It's quite a journey.
Right, let's start with the foundation. Herodotus, 5th century BCE.
Yeah.
He visits Egypt, travels to the Fayum region near the ancient Lake Moeris.
And crucially, he doesn't see ruins like we see today. He sees a functioning complex, right?
Exactly. He describes this vast, sprawling temple city, made of pale limestone, glittering in the sun. Just enormous.
What kind of structures did he mention seeing, specifically on the surface level?
He talks about 12 huge covered courts. These weren't just open spaces, they were grand halls, interspersed with colonnades, open courtyards, long passageways, a real architectural marvel above ground.
And it wasn't just for religious purposes.
No, that's key. It served both the gods and the state. There were shrines, certainly dedications to Sobek, the local crocodile god, very important in Fayum,
Of course.
and to Ra, the sun god. But right alongside these, Herodotus saw offices bustling with scribes.
Scribes doing what exactly? Not writing history, you said.
No, they were managing the very lifeblood of Egypt. This complex, according to Herodotus, was where the agricultural census happened, where taxes paid in grain were recorded and stored,
And maybe most importantly.
predicting the Nile flood, calculating its arrival, its height, absolutely crucial for survival. Herodotus called it Egypt in miniature.
That phrase really sticks. Who guided him through this?
He mentions a high priest, a man named Thamos. And Thamos apparently confirmed this administrative function, saying something like, "This is where the Nile itself is counted and foretold."
Fascinating. But Herodotus hints that the real secrets were hidden below ground. Tell us about the descent. It sounds dramatic.
Oh, it's incredibly dramatic, almost cinematic. Thamos leads him away from the public courts onto this raised platform of polished black granite.
Okay.
And in the center, there's this massive stone slab, perfectly fitted, no visible hinges, no seam. It just looks like part of the floor.
Like a trap door, but monumental.
Exactly. Thamos speaks some ancient words, Herodotus says, and the block doesn't grind or scrape. It just sinks silently, straight down into the earth.
Revealing what?
A staircase.
Yeah.
Steps leading down into absolute blackness.
And the whole atmosphere changes.
Completely. Daylight gone. The air becomes cool, damp, and Herodotus notes this faint, distinct metallic smell.
A metallic smell. That's intriguing. A technological hint, maybe.
It certainly makes you wonder. And the lighting he describes, faint blue lamps along the walls. Critically, he says they were burning without flame.
No flames. So not torches or oil lamps, something else entirely.
It suggests some kind of non-combustion light source. Maybe phosphorescence, chemical cold light. We can only speculate, but it's a striking detail.
And the descent itself wasn't straightforward.
Not at all. It becomes psychological. Thamos warns him, don't look back. Of course, Herodotus does.
Naturally.
And as he glances back up the stairs, he sees the opening they came through is just gone, replaced by solid, seamless stone.
Wait, hold on. Are we talking about actual huge stone blocks moving silently and instantly? Or maybe some kind of illusion, disorientation?
Well, according to Thamos, as reported by Herodotus, it's real. The priest says, and this is chilling, the labyrinth rearranges itself. It remembers who walks within.
At least remembers. That implies intelligence, or at least a dynamic system.
It does. Herodotus also mentions the walls seem to whisper as if alive. Maybe acoustics. Maybe air pressure changes through hidden channels. It suggests an organic, responsive security system. Not just static traps, but something that actively adapts.
That's genuinely next-level security for the ancient world. Kinetic architecture.
It really is. They pass through other chambers, apparently guarded by statues with lion heads, before reaching this crucial point, a chamber filled with water.
Water, like a moat underground.
Sort of. A wide, dark, still pool, crossed only by these very narrow bridges made of polished red granite. A serious bottleneck.
And what's in the water?
This is the ultimate security layer, combining architecture with, well, biology. Thamos points down into the dark water. Herodotus sees silent reptilian shapes gliding beneath the surface.
Crocodiles.
Sacred crocodiles. Remember Sobek. This is their domain. Thamos explains they are the final guardians. If an unworthy person, the false pilgrim, tries to cross, the labyrinth somehow directs them into the pool.
Okay, that's terrifying. So it's a physical barrier, a psychological test, and a living defense system all in one.
Exactly. Only after crossing this watery threshold do they reach what Herodotus initially thinks is the functional core. He calls it a temple of mathematics.
Because of what he saw on the walls.
Precisely. He describes the walls as being completely covered, but not with the usual scenes, kings smiting enemies, gods receiving offerings. No, it was endless rows of symbols.
What kind of symbols?
Tally marks, he says. Concentric circles, ratios, geometric figures, like a vast, complex mathematical display, an ancient spreadsheet almost.
But the priest corrects him.
Immediately, Thamos says, no, this isn't a temple of mathematics, it's a temple of balance.
Balance. Matt. The fundamental Egyptian concept of order, truth, cosmic harmony.
Exactly. The shift is crucial. The purpose wasn't abstract math for its own sake. It was applied computation, using these ratios and numbers to compute the harmony of Egypt.
Harmony in what sense?
Predicting harvests, forecasting the Nile flood accurately, ensuring the canals distributed water correctly, maintaining the balance of the two lands. Thamos apparently said something profound. The gods do not speak in words, they speak in ratios.
Wow, so the architecture, the symbols, they were encoding divine logic, the rules of the cosmos as numbers.
That seems to be the implication.
Yeah.
And just then, Herodotus feels a low tremor run through the floor. The whole structure seems to adjust itself.
Like it's alive.
Thamos notes it. The labyrinth shifts again. It remembers we have come too far. It's as if they're being processed by the system, allowed deeper only step by step.
Where do they go next?
They pass through a hall of weighing with colossal balance scales, reinforcing that theme of balance and judgment before reaching the deepest part. The passage narrows, the stone changes.
Changes how?
From the pale limestone above, it becomes much darker, denser, smoother. Thamos suggests it's obsidian, or maybe even metal.
Metal. Deep underground.
That's what Herodotus reports Thamos saying. This marks the transition perhaps from the administrative and ritual levels to the core. Well, the core mechanism.
Which leads them to the hidden heart. What did he find there?
A vast circular chamber, ceiling lost in shadow. And in the center, this immense object, smooth, dark, almost glass-like, partly embedded in the rock floor. Herodotus describes it as looking like a huge, fallen vessel.
A vessel, like a ship.
That's exactly the word Thamos uses. He gives it this incredible name, the ship of the first horizon.
The ship of the first horizon. What did he mean by that?
According to the priest's explanation to Herodotus, this ship fell from the sky before the time of Menes, the very first pharaoh, before recorded Egyptian history began.
Fall from the sky. Like a meteorite.
Or something else. Thamos implies the labyrinth itself wasn't built primarily for Amenemhat III. It was built over this ship. To hide it, protect it, and, get this, feed its spirit.
Feed its spirit? What does that even mean? Like it's a power source?
Frau.
Or a data store?
It's incredibly ambiguous,
Yeah.
but deeply suggestive. And then Thamos does something amazing. He touches a specific symbol on the vessel's hull.
S.
Suddenly, thin beams of light shoot up from the object, forming this shimmering dome overhead. An astronomical display,
Like a planetarium.
but far more advanced than anything Herodotus would have known.
Yeah.
He describes seeing miniature orbits, planets moving, a radiant sun glowing intensely, and beyond the solar system,
Yes.
a pair of twin stars burning brightly, one white, one blue.
Sirius has to be Sirius. Sothis. Absolutely central to Egyptian cosmology, their calendar, the Nile flood prediction.
Precisely. Kamos confirms it.
Yeah.
And then he delivers the core revelation, the reason for this whole underground complex. This vessel, this system, is connected to the home of the builders.
The builders of the ship or the labyrinth? Or both?
He implies both. He says the lower chambers of the labyrinth were constructed specifically to translate the pulses that come from that distant light from Sirius.
Translate pulses.
Exactly.
Receiving data. A massive receiver.
It sounds astonishingly like an information system built to process cosmic memory or cosmic signals.
Did Herodotus ask the obvious question, were the gods, or these builders, star travelers?
He did. And Thamos gives a classic, deeply Egyptian, cryptic answer. Names change, stars remain. The labyrinth is their memory turned to stone.
Memory turned to stone.
Yeah.
Wow, okay. How does the visit end?
With an oath. Kanos makes Herodotus swear absolute secrecy about the deepest level, about the ship, the star connection. He says the world above ground worships images, not causes, and would misunderstand or destroy this truth.
So Herodotus kept the secret. Mostly.
In his public writings, he describes the labyrinth's wonders, but holds back the deepest secrets. But he apparently kept one piece of physical evidence, maybe given to him by Thamos,
What was it?
a small copper amulet, engraved with 12 spirals winding around a single central point. That specific detail, the 12 spirals, becomes a potential key linking this incredible story back to the physical structure.
Okay, that account from Herodotus is just staggering. Cosmic ships, moving walls, flameless light. But now we have to crash back down to Earth, right? How much of this finds any echo in actual archaeology?
Exactly, we had to ground the myth. First off, the labyrinth's existence and general location aren't in doubt. Other classical writers, Strabo, Diodorus Siculus, Pliny the Elder, they all confirm Herodotus' basic claim. It existed near Amenemhat III's pyramid at Hawara, and is considered more complex, more wondrous even, than the pyramids.
So the location is solid. But when Sir Flinders Petrie, the famous Egyptologist, excavated there in the late 19th, early 20th century, he didn't find a shimmering limestone complex or underground wonders, did he?
No, he found mostly disappointment, at least compared to the classical descriptions. He unearthed the foundations, yes. He found vast quantities of stone chippings, evidence of the structure's original material. He found huge mud brick retaining walls or structures nearby, but the magnificent labyrinth superstructure described by Herodotus, essentially gone. Quarried away over millennia, stones reused in Roman buildings, medieval structures. It was basically a convenient pre-cut stone quarry for centuries.
Okay, so the above ground part was destroyed, but what about the underground half that Herodotus and others mentioned? Did Petrie find entrances? Tunnels?
This is where Petrie hit a major obstacle, something specific to the Fayum Depression, the water table.
Ah, right. The area is near the lake, it's low-lying.
Extremely low-lying. As Petrie tried to dig deeper, searching for those subterranean levels, his excavation pits kept flooding. The rising water table, likely higher in his time than in antiquity, made deep excavation almost impossible. He couldn't map what he couldn't keep dry.
So it's a double whammy, surface destruction, and then water blocking access to anything potentially deeper?
Precisely. That combination, the quarrying and the high water table, is why mainstream scholarship remains very cautious. There's uncertainty about how much, if anything, of that supposed multi-level underground complex actually survived intact.
Okay, if digging is basically impossible, or at least incredibly difficult and expensive because of the water, how do we look for Herodotus's hidden levels today?
We turn to science, geophysics, remote sensing methods that let us peer below the surface without digging.
Like radar.
Exactly. Early attempts used things like VLF, EM, very low frequency electromagnetics, and electrical resistivity. These are good at finding contrasts near the surface.
And did they find anything?
Yes, they did detect anomalies just a few meters down. Shapes, elongated lines, square features that strongly suggest buried walls, matching the general grid layout of a large complex, confirming Petrie's foundation plan to some extent.
But that's still shallow. That's not the deep, multi-level structure Herodotus implies.
Correct. To probe deeper, especially through waterlogged soil and debris, you need more powerful techniques. like ground penetrating radar, GPR.
How does GPR work?
It sends pulses of microwave energy into the ground and listens for the reflections bouncing back off different materials. Stone walls reflect differently than soil, for example.
Has GPR been used at Hawara? And what did it show?
And it has been used, yes. And it has picked up hints of deeper structural anomalies, possible walls, grid-like patterns, consistent with a very large structure extending below the known foundations. However,
Well, there's always a however with Hawara, isn't there?
there usually is. The GPR results at Hawara are notoriously difficult to interpret cleanly.
Why? Is it the water again?
Primarily, yes. Water conducts electricity and reflects radar waves very strongly. Wet soil, mud, debris, it all creates signal scatter, absorbs the radar energy, and limits the depth of penetration. It makes the reflections fuzzy, ambiguous. You don't get a nice sharp map of thousands of chambers.
So GPR hints at something, but it's not definitive proof of Herodotus's underground labyrinth.
Not definitive, no. It's tantalizingly suggestive, but lacks clarity. Which brings us to the more recent and perhaps more controversial methods, looking from space.
Space-based radar, how does that work?
We're talking about synthetic aperture radar, SAR, from satellites like the European Space Agency's Sentinel-1. SAR can operate at longer wavelengths than typical GPR, and under the right conditions, these signals can penetrate deeper into the ground, especially in arid or semi-arid environments.
And has this been applied to Hawara?
There have been independent analyses, yes. Notably, a preprint paper by Mark Carlotto in 2023 analyzing SAR data. The claim is that the signals reveal patterns deep underground, potentially tens of meters down that outline of buried structure,
How big?
roughly matching the enormous footprint Petrie originally estimated for the labyrinth, based on the surface debris field, and potentially even extending under the modern Abdul Wabi Canal that cuts through the site.
Okay, that is tantalizing. A massive structure deep down, potentially surviving beneath the water table and modern obstructions. But now we need to address the more, let's say, sensational claims that sometimes pop up around this research. We need to be really clear and impartial here for you, the listener.
Absolutely critical, because alongside the cautious scientific interpretations, you often hear more dramatic claims discussed in independent reports or online forums. Things like geophysical data identifying a specific 40-meter tic-tac shaped metallic object deep beneath Hawara.
A metallic object. Echoes of Herodotus's ship of the first horizon.
The connection's often made in those speculative circles, yes.
Yeah.
You also hear assertions that these deep scans have produced definitive multi-level maps showing thousands of rooms perfectly preserved.
Right. So what is the actual status of these claims within the mainstream archaeological and geophysical communities?
The status is unconfirmed and viewed with significant skepticism. It's crucial for you to understand that none of these spectacular findings, the specific metallic object, the detailed subterranean maps, have been published in peer-reviewed scientific journals or confirmed by independent verified archaeological work.
Why this skepticism? If the radar signals show something,
Because interpreting deep radar signals, especially through complex waterlogged ground, is incredibly difficult. The anomalies are real, but what are they? Scholars point to several possibilities. Misidentification of natural geological strata. Layers of rock or clay can look like walls on radar. Signal distortions caused by the water and wet debris. The sheer difficulty of resolving fine details at the depth.
so it could be wishful thinking interpreting ambiguous data.
That's the concern. The data is suggestive. It hints that more might be down there than Petrie found. But jumping from ambiguous anomalies to a confirmed metallic spaceship or a perfectly mapped 5-level labyrinth, that's a leap current published evidence doesn't support.
Okay, so let's summarize the evidence. Location confirmed. Classical accounts describe immense complexity, half above, half below ground. Petrie finds foundations, confirms the massive scale, but the superstructure is gone, and deep digging is blocked by water. Modern geophysics, VLF, GPR, ASRR, detects anomalies consistent with buried structures, possibly deep and extensive.
But interpretation is difficult, and most dramatic claims remain unverified by peer-reviewed science. The potential is there, the hints are tantalizing, but definitive proof of Herodotus's full vision is still buried, awaiting confirmation.
This uncertainty, though, perfectly sets up the next question. If even part of this multi-level structure does exist, why was it built with such complexity? What was the purpose?
Right. Let's explore the why. Moving beyond Petrie's foundations, we dive into this multi-level hypothesis. The idea that the labyrinth wasn't just wide, but deep, descending through multiple tiers.
Based partly on the classical accounts saying half was below ground, and partly on those ambiguous but suggestive GPR and satellite radar hints of a massive, dense, grid-like structure deep down. Some speculate maybe even 5 distinct levels.
That's one number floated in the more speculative interpretations, yes. 5 levels would imply an incredible investment of resources and a very complex purpose. The theory suggests this purpose was twofold, interconnected.
Which were?
Practical defense on one hand, and sacred ritual function on the other.
Okay, let's tackle defense first. Why would a pharaoh's funerary complex need that level of security? We're talking beyond just blocking tomb robbers. Herodotus' account implies something far more active.
It suggests layers of defense. Physical, certainly thick walls, maybe hidden pitfalls, but also psychological. The sheer scale, the confusing layout, was designed to deter and disorient. Think of it as an early form of high security architecture.
What kind of mechanisms might have been involved beyond just a confusing layout?
We can hypothesize based on Herodotus and general Egyptian practices. False doors indistinguishable from real ones, but leading nowhere, just solid rock. Acoustic traps, chambers designed so echoes behave strangely, confusing an intruder's sense of direction and space. Perhaps even pressure systems.
Pressure systems, like what Tammuz hinted at with the whispering walls.
Possibly. Using airflow or water pressure through hidden conduits to create sounds, illusions, or maybe even trigger simple mechanisms. Remember the shifting ways Herodotus described. It might not have needed massive moving blocks.
It could have been achieved through clever illusions, directing intruders down dead ends using light, sound, maybe even airflow.
Exactly. If one passage is designed to be acoustically dead or feels slightly pressurized, while the parallel one echoes normally, the initiated priest knows the correct path. The uninitiated intruder gets subtly channeled away from the vital core through brilliant but relatively simple architectural tricks.
So it's security through misdirection and sensory manipulation. Okay, but beyond protecting the pharaoh's burial, what about the ritual purpose of these supposed lower levels? Especially if we entertain Herodotus' story about the ship.
If the multi-level hypothesis holds, the deeper levels weren't just empty space or tombs. They were likely repositories for the most sacred items.
Sacred items like?
Not just gold or jewels. We're talking potent ritual objects. Perhaps highly accurate astronomical charts or cosmic maps, like the one Herodotus saw displayed. Maybe caches of that metal of the gods, meteoritic iron, which we know the Egyptians valued highly and used in sacred contexts.
And the labyrinth itself becomes more than storage. It becomes a pathway.
A physical initiatory pathway. The journey through its levels could have ritually mirrored something profoundly important in Egyptian belief.
Like the journey of the soul after death.
Precisely. Specifically, the journey of the sun god Ra, or the deceased king identified with Osiris, through the Duat, the underworld. Each level, each confusing turn, each threshold like the crocodile pool, could represent one of the gates or trials faced in the afterlife.
So, walking the labyrinth was a way to ritually experience death, navigate chaos, and achieve rebirth or enlightenment.
That's the idea. It's an initiation machine. To pass through it successfully was to gain sacred knowledge, to align oneself with Ma, with cosmic order.
And the architecture itself would need to actively support these rituals, not just symbolize them.
Absolutely. Think about acoustics again. If the deepest chambers were lined with resonant stone like obsidian, as suggested or designed with specific geometries,
They could amplify sound.
they could amplify chants, create specific frequencies, maybe even standing waves. Sound and vibration wouldn't just be incidental, they'd be functional tools within the ritual process. Tools to alter consciousness, perhaps, or to tune the space for communication with the divine, or with whatever the ship represented.
Is this idea of ritual architecture using pathways and alignments unique to Hawara, or do we see hints of it elsewhere?
We definitely see smaller scale examples. Look at the temple complex at Medinet Madi, also in the Fayum, or the intricate crypts beneath the Temple of Hathor at Dendera. They have labyrinthine corridors, hidden chambers, tunnels aligned precisely to solar or stellar events.
So Hawara might just be the ultimate, grandest expression of a known Egyptian architectural and ritual principle.
Exactly. The labyrinth is a microcosm of the cosmos, a structure designed to mirror and facilitate the journey from earthly chaos towards divine order, Mayat.
And if we factor back in that potential metallic object from the geophysical speculation, if it's real, where does it fit?
If it exists, and if it's metallic or crystalline, it could be the absolute core, the anchor point for the entire system's ritual function. Not just a relic to be guarded, but perhaps an active component.
Active how?
Maybe it resonated, conducted some form of energy, anchored a field. If the labyrinth was about maintaining cosmic balance, this object could have been the focal point, the tuning fork, the central node distributing something, vibrational patterns, temporal synchronization, divine presence throughout the entire massive structure. It stabilizes the whole operation.
Okay, this is where we make the big conceptual leap. We've talked defense, we've talked ritual initiation. Now let's explore this really provocative idea, the labyrinth as a sacred processor, an ancient analog supercomputer. What does that even mean in practice? How does a building compute?
It means shifting our perspective. We have to look at the geometry in the process as encoding logic. Forget silicon chips. Think stone corridors and ritual actions.
Start with the basic layout. The geophysical hints suggest a massive grid, right? Rows and columns of chambers and corridors.
Exactly. And that grid structure immediately brings to mind the architecture of a computational system, specifically something called a finite state machine.
Okay, break that down for us. What's a finite state machine in this context?
Think of it simply as a system that can exist in a limited number of specific conditions or states. Moving from one state to another requires a specific input or action. In the labyrinth, each chamber could represent a state or processing node.
And the corridors.
The corridors are the transitions. Walking down a specific corridor, opening a particular door, performing a ritual action like pouring water or chanting a phrase, that's the input that moves the system from state A, chamber A, to state B, chamber B. The ritual itself becomes the computation.
And the different levels, those potential 5 tiers, how do they fit into this computational model?
They could represent different stages of processing, like layers in a modern neural network almost.
Yeah.
The upper levels, the ones Herodotus saw operating publicly, those could be the input layer. This is where real-world data comes in: astronomical observations, reports from the gnomes, symbolic offerings.
And the middle levels, the confusing maze-like parts.
That's your processing unit. The branching paths, the symmetrical layouts, the potential bed ends. This is where the complex decision logic happens. The if this, then that calculations encoded in the pathways the priests take based on the inputs.
And the deepest levels, the hidden sanctum with the ship.
That's the output layer. This is where the final result of the computation manifests. Maybe as an oracle delivered by the high priest, a specific resonance pattern, a vision, or the state of balance measured in the ritual chambers.
For this to work like a computer, even an analog one, it needs to represent basic logical states like ONOF or 10. How could stone architecture do that?
Through duality and contrast. Look at symmetry. We know Egyptian architecture often uses perfect mirror symmetry. In logic, symmetry can function like an inversion, a not gate.
How so? Give us an example.
Imagine a symmetrical layout. If the input condition on one side represents state A, passing through the symmetrical architecture could logically result in not state A on the other side. The building itself performs a logical negation through its geometry.
Okay, that's clever. What else?
Contrast. Think about alternating chambers. One large and open, perhaps brightly lit by those flameless lamps or a light shaft, representing state 1, on-N, active, true. The next chamber might be small, sealed, dark, representing state 0, OFF, inactive, false. Moving through a sequence of these chambers allows the system to process binary-like logic.
Wow. And given the potential scale, maybe thousands of chambers across multiple levels, the computational capacity could be enormous, couldn't it?
Absolutely astronomical, at least in terms of symbolic throughput. If you model it like a cellular automaton, where the state of each chamber influences its neighbors in the next step of the ritual, you could have immense complexity. Let's estimate, say, 1,200 nodes per level times 5 levels.
That's 6,000 nodes.
Right. And if the processing involves moving through sequences of these, say even a depth of 60 logical stages, the number of potential pathways, potential computations, becomes staggeringly high. It allows the structure to encode and process incredibly complex data, astronomical cycles, harvest yields, flood patterns, maybe even historical narratives or prophecies, by mapping them onto its physical geometry and ritual sequences.
But a computer needs more than just logic gates and memory. It needs operating principles. Things like a clock cycle to time operations, data buses to move information, maybe amplifiers. How could the labyrinth mimic those?
This is where the interpretation gets really fascinating, linking physical features back to computational functions. Let's start with timing the clock cycle.
How would that work?
Stairways and ramps between levels. The structured rhythmic movement of the priests during processions or rituals, that cadence, that timing, acts as the system's clock pulse, synchronizing the steps of the computation.
Okay, plausible. What about moving data around? Data buses. You mentioned water channels earlier.
Exactly. Those subterranean water channels, maybe even air ducts, implied by the whispering walls or that metallic smell, they could function as data buses. Using hydraulic logic, the flow, pressure, or even color changes in liquids to transmit signals or state changes across different parts of the vast complex. Imagine. Increased pressure in channel X triggers a mechanism in chamber Y.
Hydraulic logic.
Yeah.
Amazing. And the acoustics. The resonance chambers.
Those could be amplifiers or oscillators. If specific chambers were designed to resonate at certain frequencies, chanting or sound could create stable standing waves. These vibrations could stabilize the computation, amplify weak signals, or act as reference frequencies, like oscillators in modern electronics. They stabilize the analog processing.
And input. How does data get into the stone computer?
Sun-aligned shafts or skylights, even in the upper levels. These could act as input gates. When sunlight hits a specific point at a specific time of day or year, it triggers a process, maybe eliminates a symbol, heats a sensitive material. Direct input from the cosmos.
So putting it all together, the labyrinth uses its architecture, water systems, acoustics, light, and the perfectly timed rituals of the priests as its hardware and software.
Precisely. It's a vast, sacred analog processor. Geometry encodes the logic, ritual provides the timing and program execution, and the priests act as the input-output interface, reading the results. And that potential core object, the ship, maybe it's the master clock, the central oscillator, keeping the whole immense system synchronized.
This model is incredibly complex. To make it work, there must have been some core organizing principle. You mentioned Herodotus's focus on the 12 great halls or courts he saw. Why is that number 12 potentially so important to this whole supercomputer concept?
12 is absolutely fundamental in the Egyptian worldview. It's not arbitrary. It connects everything, the cosmos, time, and the administration of Egypt itself. It represents a complete cycle, structural unity.
How so, cosmically?
Think of Ra's journey. The sun god travels through the Duat, the underworld, during the 12 hours of the night. To be reborn, he must pass through 12 gates or pylons, each with its own guardians and challenges. 12 marks the stages of transformation and renewal.
And temporally,
12 relates to the 12 lunar cycles in a year, roughly. And the sky was often divided into sections based on constellations, used for tracking time, crucial for their calendar and agriculture.
okay, cosmic and temporal significance. But you said it also relates to administration.
Critically, yes. Ancient Egypt was traditionally divided into administrative districts called nomes. And according to some traditions, there were originally 12 sacred nomes in both Upper and Lower Egypt, unifying the land.
So the 12 courts Herodotus saw directly mirrored the structure of the nation.
That's the theory. Each of the 12 courts physically represented one of the core provinces or regions of Egypt. The labyrinth wasn't just a model of the cosmos. It was a functional model of the nation itself, integrated with the cosmos.
Which makes it, as you called it earlier, a national analog computer, a system designed to monitor and maybe even regulate the health of the entire country.
Exactly. It becomes a macro-scale system model.
Okay, let's walk through how that might have worked. Describe the operational loop, step by step, if this labyrinth computer was processing the state of the nation.
Right. Let's model the processing loop. It starts logically with the input phase.
Data entry.
Data entry, ancient Egyptian style. Imagine delegates arriving from each of the 12 key nomes or regions. They don't bring spreadsheets, they bring symbolic but representative samples.
Samples of what?
Real-world data encoded physically. Samples of grain to represent the success or failure of the local harvest. Vials of Nile water collected locally, indicating its purity, volume, maybe sediment load. Reports of animal fertility, unusual weather patterns, significant omens observed in that nome.
Okay, so tangible data points representing the state of each region. What happens next? The processing phase.
Correct. The priests take over. They are the operators running the program. They move through the labyrinth's corridors and chambers in carefully prescribed ritual sequences. These aren't random wanderings. They are algorithms encoded as movement and action.
What actions?
Chanting specific prayers or formulas, perhaps activating acoustic resonances, lighting those flameless lamps in a certain order or pattern. And crucially, using the input samples, pouring the Nile water from Nome X into its designated channel within the labyrinth, placing the grain sample from Nome Y onto a specific balance scale in the Hall of Weighing.
So the ritual actions physically distribute the regional data throughout the labyrinth structure.
Exactly. They activate the pathways, the hydraulic channels, the acoustic chambers, the light shafts. The data flows through the geometric logic encoded in the building. This leads to the computation phase.
Where the building thinks.
In a way, the structure itself interacts with the inputted data. How does the water flow? Does it reach a certain level? Does it balance correctly against a standard measure? How does sound echo in a chamber, activated by a specific gnome's ritual? Does light from a solstice shaft strike the correct symbol, or is it obscured?
The priests are observing these interactions.
They're observing and measuring the outputs. For instance, if the water from Gnome Sion, representing its expected contribution to the flood, flows sluggishly or fails to balance its scale, that's a computational result.
Meaning what? What does that result signify?
It signifies an imbalance in that region relative to the expected cosmic or national harmony, Mat 8. Unstable water flow might predict a dangerously low Nile in that area, leading to potential famine. Or maybe an unusually strong resonance in one chamber indicates pestilence is likely. The structure is comparing the real-world state against the ideal divine cosmic pattern.
Sure, the priests aren't getting a number spit out, but reading a complex pattern of physical phenomena.
Precisely. They're reading the patterns of light, water balance, resonance, flow. It's analog computation, pattern recognition. This leads to the final step, the output phase.
Interpretation and delivery.
The high priest, perhaps positioned at the system's core, maybe near that central ship or in a primary oracle chamber, acts as the final interpreter. He synthesizes all the subtle results from the different gnome inputs and ritual pathways. He reads the overall pattern.
And delivers the result.
He interprets the labyrinth's answer, which might come as a vision, a specific sound pattern, a feeling of balance or imbalance, or a visible pattern of light or liquid. This is the divine oracle, the system's output.
An output that could be incredibly practical, like the precise predicted height of the Nile flood, or a warning about locusts, or guidance on where to focus resources.
Exactly. Actionable intelligence for the entire nation, derived from integrating regional data with cosmic cycles through this massive ritualistic architectural computer.
This model paints the labyrinth as something truly revolutionary then. Not just a tomb, not just a temple, but potentially the world's oldest known large-scale distributed data processing architecture.
A sacred analog supercomputer operating through these intricate ritual feedback loops, designed fundamentally to keep Egypt in sync with the cosmos and ensure its stability and prosperity. It's a breathtaking concept. #tag outro.
So we started this deep dive with Herodotus, awestruck by a complex that, he was told, was built for gods to remember themselves, an almost mythical structure.
And we journeyed from that high drama, almost unbelievable account through the hard realities of archaeology, the destruction, the frustrating water table,
To the tantalizing hints from 21st century geophysics. Those radar echoes from deep beneath the Fayum sands suggesting something massive might still be down there, hidden.
and finally, we arrived at this truly provocative theory that the labyrinth's intricate geometry, its reported mechanisms, its connection to the number 12 wasn't just symbolic but functional. The architecture itself was a form of logic processing.
An ancient analog computer designed to process inputs from across Egypt and the cosmos to maintain balance. It reframes the entire structure.
It really does. If this model holds any water, the knowledge the labyrinth processed wasn't just static history or priestly lore, it was dynamic, predictive. A living forecast system operating on a continental scale, trying to harmonize human society with the fundamental rhythms of the universe.
Which leads us to that final mind-bending thought for you, our listener. If Herodotus' account and these modern theories point towards an ancient civilization building structures capable of this kind of complex analog computation,
Structures whose true nature might be hidden beneath layers of destruction, water, and centuries of misinterpretation.
then what other ancient sites might hold similar secrets? What other forms of hidden geometric logic? What other ancient information systems might we still be walking over today, mistaking them for simple temples, tombs, or just piles of rock?
It certainly makes you look at the ancient world and the potential sophistication hidden within its monumental architecture in a completely different light.
We hope this exploration has sparked your curiosity. Keep thinking about those connections, ancient structures, mathematics, ritual, and maybe, just maybe, forgotten forms of computation. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.
Okay, let's just jump right in. How does something purely abstract, like, mathematics, these